Yep.
On your Sanchez palmaris,
Yep. Uh-huh.
do you ever prune it back after it blooms? Or what do you do to it?
Yeah, I do. Now I do, because I started getting seedlings a lot. So,
oh, I thought it didn't reseed.
well, it never had for years and years. And then last year, suddenly I had a lot of them. So I thought, okay, that's enough of that. So now before they all go to those dandelion-like seed heads, I clip them all off.
You cut off just the flower head.
Yes.
Do you prune it down?
I haven't yet.
Yeah, I'm trying to decide what I should do to it.
I'm not sure.
So you don't trim it down all the way to the ground or anything like that?
No, I haven't. I'm not sure how it would handle that. Maybe it would.
I don't know.
Well, someone's going to have to take the bait and try it out. Report back.
Dive in, huh?
Try it with one of your seedlings.
There you go. I could let one grow and then do that. That's a good idea.
Welcome to the Juneteenth Cal Hort meeting. I want to acknowledge the holiday today. We'll get started. I just heard from Paul, and he's been sick since this morning, so we're not going to have that. But luckily, a lot of people sent a lot of plant stuff to share for the plant forum, so we'll just do that today. Next month, we have Kiamara Ludwig, who grew all those plants for us and is in the North American Rock Garden Society. We'll talk about that at the end. So last Saturday, we went to Kristen's garden, and we had a nice, good turnout. We saw her almost, I don't know, let's say the 12-foot, 15-foot lilies, not quite in bloom, and all sorts of other goodies, and saw our watering system and her potting area. And
it was nice having everybody.
We loved going there. So thank you so much for sharing your garden. It was really a great morning. Here's a few things that I took pictures of. I love the little onions with the little hats and the garlic. Then next week, we're going to Tunnel Tops. And it's just a fantastic space. You know, one way you're looking at Powell's Fine Arts and the city in the background. And then in that middle photo, there's the playground is right in front of that. Can you imagine playing in a playground with that view? It's amazing. And then they have a great whole hillside of dune type plants with the Eryphyllum and the lupin and beach strawberries. And they had prunella, I think, there as well, which I've never seen the native, I don't think. And then also, as Dick says, Dick Turner's going to be leading it. And he said there's all sorts of good food. And I did have a gyro there, and it was really good. And so I want to thank everybody for sharing for the plant forum. Saul, I saw you were on here, yes?
Yes, I am. I just wanted to talk about the Ceanothis for a minute. On the left is a picture of the Ray Hartman Ceanothis with the poppies, and it's just such a beautiful kind of blue and gold together. I really love that. And then the second picture is of the California tortoiseshells. So the adult lays their eggs in the flowers, and then the caterpillars feed in the flowers and then on the leaves. And in general, these butterflies prefer the Ceanothis with the larger leaves, like Ray Hartman or powder blue. There are lots of them, and there are lots of Ceanothis with smaller leaves as well. And then on the right is just a picture of the adult, which is really a beautiful butterfly.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just really into that plant-insect interaction thing. So
No, I love that. Is that in your garden, the Ceanothis?
no, that's actually at the UC Botanic Garden.
Oh, nice, nice. Yeah, that classic blue and gold of California, right?
Yeah.
Judy, you're up.
I think the little bit of water, or the lot of water that we got, really made a great show this year. And so the Orlea grandiflora and then the Clarkia, I think it's Amoena, is doing well. And then I always have some Calandrinia on the left there. And then some Lovenimus. So these all reseed. So that makes it really easy. The Calandrinia is perennial. There are some Molenbergia rigans, but everything else I think just reseeds itself, so that it usually looks pretty good in the springtime.
Does all the annuals cover up the Calandrinia foliage? Is that because all you see is the flowers popping up, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. But I'll probably pull out all of Orlea and other things that are growing in there later.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it turned out well this year.
We want to see some of that Orlea on the seed exchange.
Oh yeah. Oh boy. It like I said, there's so much of it. I'll collect more seed. Oh, I was very pleased because up in the upper left is the Pelargoniumm ardens, which I got from Robin Pear, and it's usually shy to bloom, but this year it really has got a bloom stalk. When I was looking up on her website, that the bloom stalk tends to rise high above the leaves, but the bloom is really quite nice this year. So I was pleased to see that. Again, I think thanks to the bountiful rain we had. And this one on the lower left is called, I think it's Flor de Fuego. Now this was sold, I got it from the San Francisco Botanic Garden, and the person that used to deal with the geraniums called it number 9. And so that's how I bought it, is number 9. And I've talked to Robin about it, and she said that, you know, it's most likely, you know, a part of one of the Flor de Fuego. And as Ellen mentioned there, it's hybridized by J. Capac in Southern California. And then on the right is Hibiscus trionum. I don't see it very often, but this stayed through the winter, so it's a perennial.
Wow.
It bloomed last year too, and I think it's just a real pretty flower. It does remind me of okra flowers, but it's a sprawling vine from Southern Europe, and I like the flowers a lot, and I like the little buds there with their little kind of papery shells, I guess.
Need to figure out how to put little lights in those things.
Oh, that would be fun, huh?
Yeah. I read that it was an annual, but maybe that's only in colder areas.
It's an
maybe
annual in my garden.
Is it? Okay.
Yes.
This was from last year, so it didn't die back all the way, and it bloomed again. It's
Wow.
blooming again this year.
Yeah, mine wouldn't even be showing. I don't even think I'll see it until another month and a half from now.
Wow.
Is yours an annual, Kristen, in your yard?
I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you find it invasive, Kristen?
No, not the. First of all, just so you understand, my first love is the mallows. So no-
right.
But well, actually, I have one, and I don't even know the name of it. It's a very little tiny red flowering thing that is getting a little too crazy. But this is not. This is just a gorgeous thing that keeps coming and giving constantly. And the flowers. I mean, I love the stamens and everything on the hibiscus a lot too. So very cool. Look at all that pollen there on that flower.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I love the little buds there.
They're cute. Yeah. I think there were some seeds in this year's Cal Hort seed exchange, because I'm pretty sure I sent some. Oh, and I have a question. We had John Sugo.
John
Yes.
Sudakawa.
Yes. So I bought one of his Mechanopsis, Bart, and the other one bloomed, and I've shown it. This one seems to be like short stem. What caused this, if anyone knows?
That does not look happy.
I know, but why would it like short stem and start blooming at the base like that?
Well, it almost looks like those leaves have something akin to mildew.
I was gonna guess some sort of fungus as well.
Yeah.
Just the way that they're curling and they're still green, but also not holding moisture at all, it seems.
And that caused the flower also then to get whatever the fungus was or something, and
Yeah, that's
why
my
it looks so
guess.
sad.
Last month you showed a bright, bold one blooming, right?
Yeah, that was the other one. I bought 2 of them from him, and that one bloomed first. This one is more of a purple flower, but like it doesn't seem to be happy. And I just wondered why I got the short stem.
And then I have a bunch of them, and all of mine are blooming normally, but
They are.
all different sizes and from blues to lavenders in color.
Mhm.
So they do vary.
So this is a
and-
good year for them?
Yeah, overall, I'd say mine are having an excellent year.
Okay. All right.
Mine
Okay.
are still blooming, but they're almost at the end now.
And you said you
Okay.
keep them in the shade and just keep them moderately watered, then never dry out, right?
That's correct.
Okay. All right.
And I have them in the ones that do best. And actually, my older ones are flowering now. Young ones flowered like over a month ago. But the older ones are coming into flower now. And they're more substantial plants.
The older ones. So
Yeah.
you're getting multiple blooms on them, you mean?
Yeah, and I think that many of the ones I got from John this year are more of the grandest sorts,
Mm-hmm.
and the ones I got the year before were more Baileyana sorts. And so there's something about just how they flower and
how they hold the leaves. I was just noticing that while I was watering just about half hour ago. It's that there's sort of a group of leaves, almost all at the same place, up the stem, sort of subtending all of the inflorescences or all of the flowering stalks. And then on the Dahlias, there's no such structure.
Huh, okay, great, thanks. I think this last one, I hope, is this Impatiens Namiamensis, and it's got that wonderful flower that I always thought it had a common name of something cockatoo or something.
Yeah, I think it was, yeah. I think I
Looks
thought-
like it.
I got this from a friend, and you know, it languishes there. It can't really take any sun, so it really bright light, but no direct sun. So has anyone ever propagated it from a cutting?
Yes.
And does it propagate fairly easily? Do you do it in water?
No, I don't do much water stuff anymore. I just do it in that peat moss pumice mix that I make.
Okay. And this time of year would be fine to do it?
Well, I find for me, it depends, but I normally I do it in the summer because the roots come out faster.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
Can you see the flowers from above, Judy, or do you kind of have to sneak underneath the plant?
You kind of have to sneak under. They're kind of all in a whorl underneath the leaves, which I thought is interesting. And that's the same with the taller stem.
You need it on a cliff or something so you can look up into it.
Well, I keep mine on a table normally, and I've tried it in the garden, but it doesn't like my soil.
Mm.
That's why I do cuttings, because I always like to see
Ah.
what they do. But you don't get frost, do you?
Light frost, we can, but I put it under the eaves.
Thank you, Judy.
Beautiful.
You're welcome.
Daisy, you're on.
Oh,
Ooh.
I had to look up the name of this plant on the left. It's not one I see very often, Spigelia marilandica, and it is from Maryland back east and the East Coast in general. It's a perennial. It completely disappears in the winter, and it didn't come up that long ago, recently, but it likes shade and moisture, or part shade, grows 1 to 2 feet wide, and it's kind of, you know, I don't know, looks a little tropical.
Daisy, I grew this once,
Uh-huh.
and it lasted a couple of years, but I don't think I watered it enough.
Oh yeah, it doesn't mind water.
And then the other thing is, I think a lot of the East Coast plants like heat at night, and you have that heat.
Yes, I do. Oh, I'm in
Mm.
Sacramento. we,
Yeah.
we get the
I
warm
saw it at
nights.
the National Botanic Garden. Where
Oh,
I saw it growing, yeah.
uh-huh.
I love this plant. Red
It-
shade.
I've had it quite a few years now. I would say 5 or 6 years.
Wow.
And it's going strong. It doesn't, you know,
Great.
seem to be stressed. And then to the right is a shrubby Scabiosa farinosa that I think I got from Nancy Schramm of Carmen's Nursery. It's very attractive to bees. Unfortunately, it needs constant deadheading. The flowers are not long lasting, which is unfortunate because I think it's a nice shrub-like plant that you don't have to prune, but I think deadheading is, you know, daily deadheading is a little too much.
A drawback for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, you could let it go to seed. Ruth Bancroft did. It was all over
really?
the place. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and you know, the lower branches tends to layer, so I dig those up and pot them up for plant sales.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. The flowers I thought were more brilliant when I bought it. And now they seem kind of a washed out lavender. But it could have been because it, you know, it came from a nicer condition, nicer area, and then it landed in Sacramento, and it's not quite as contented.
Yeah.
You know, when I was younger, I would go to Carmel,
Uh-huh.
and I always wanted to get that flower intensity that they have in Carmel, which is very hard to do out here in Danville.
Yes.
And that's why I put all these trees in, hoping that maybe shading it would make a difference, but you can't get that coolness, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
coolness Some flowers, the hotter it gets, like Ceanothis or Thunbergia batiscombii,
Mhm.
the hotter it gets, the more intense the flowers. And other plants like this one, forget about it.
Yeah. You know, I saw it offered in, I forget which wholesale nursery, either Suncrest or I don't think it was Monrovia. But I was kind of surprised now that I grow it that they offered it.
I was looking at that Spigelia plant, and it's in the Loganaceae, and I'd never heard of anything in the Loganaceae, but evidently strychnine's in that.
Oh,
And I guess they've divided it up. So I guess there's a lot of alkaloids and
oh,
I wonder if these are poisonous and that the deer don't eat them. But you don't have deer in Sacramento, do you?
that I do not have. No.
Yeah. They don't like the hot nights, I understand.
Well, I'm pretty close to the American River, and they are seen there occasionally. So, but yeah, I'm in, I guess, too urbanized the area. They prefer to avoid my street.
unless they're really hungry.
Yes, that's true. Or confused. And I
Ooh.
really love Clarkia, and this is a new one for me. This year I had very good success growing them. And it's Clarkia pulchella, meaning pretty. And it's from the Pacific Northwest of the Cascade Ranges. One of the common names is deerhorn Clarkia, which makes sense. And I'm really pleased it did as well as it did. I think a lot of the Clarkias like a little bit of shade, especially in Sacramento.
Does this get full sun then?
No, it was in my driveway. It's surrounded by other vegetation. So, maybe the top part is sunny, but part of the day, especially late afternoon, but the base of it is shaded. So
I love that one. I would happily grow that.
I
Yeah,
think
that's a beauty.
it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
Well, you should be able to get some seed for the seed exchange, no?
Yes.
I can.
Yes.
The seed I think was J.L. Hudson.
Oh, really?
I think so. I'm not positive. I don't think it was Jenny Hunt or Seed Hunt, because most of her Clarkias are native of California, and this one isn't. But I think it's worth growing.
I'm
We're
curious.
just with the delphinium too.
Yeah. And then to the right, I don't generally grow daylilies because it seemed like they never look that good for me. They need more water than I can give them. I saw this in a friend's garden, and I thought I think I'll make an exception because I like spidery flowers, and it's more than 5 or 6 inch across. It's more like 8 inch across. So, and I tend not to like giant flowers, but because it's spidery, it's okay for me.
I've got a question, Daisy. I have a question on your Clarkia. Is that color that we see in the photograph pretty accurate?
It might be a little too bright, too intense. It was maybe a little between the pale and the deepest color. Kind of.
Is it? I know in my own work, it's sometimes troublesome to photograph things that are a lavender or a mauve, and sometimes pinks will go this color in a photograph. So I didn't know if it might be more pink in real life or whether that's actually.
I think it was more pink than lavender. I was kind of in a hurry. I didn't edit it or try to adjust the color.
Well, it's hard. I learned 30 years ago to avoid adjusting the color of one color because then everything else goes off.
Yeah, that's true.
It's somewhat easy to do now for me in Photoshop, but it's hard to do globally, to make a correction globally without changing everything else in the photograph. But I just wondering, that's a really lovely combination with the sort of a lavender mauve with the blue, but I didn't know if that was the real color or if it were more pink than that.
It's probably a little intense and more, it should be maybe a little more pink than lavender. But
Daisy, I
I have a question about your behind the daylily. That's an iris, and I was
Yes.
wondering if it ever flowers for you.
It does, but I'm not so far this year it hasn't. It could be it's just a little too crowded, I kind of squeezed too much in. But in the past it was a reliable bloomer, and it's pretty. It's not a deep blue, it's kind of a washed out blue, but it looks like a bearded type iris.
I think it's called Pallida, isn't it? Pallida.
Oh, yeah, right.
I think that is one of the names.
It is. I have it in several places in my garden. It flowered spectacularly this year. I think it's a beautiful blue.
Yeah.
Real tall bearded type iris, and it's not a deep blue, but it's lovely.
Yeah,
What kind
I like it.
Saxon, what kind of conditions do you think it prefers?
Well, I have it in two completely different places in my garden. I have it in a very shady area under oaks in my rhododendron garden. It doesn't flower so great there. I grow it for the foliage because it has that silver variegation that I like so much. In the front border is where it gets more sun, and it's not full sun because I have so many shrubs around the garden, but it gets a lot more light in the front, and that's the one that bloomed beautifully this year, particularly because we had so much water. It's in a border that doesn't get much water in the summer, but it was great this year, and so it was. In fact, this was the first year I actually photographed it for my own work. It was spectacular this year. It was really, really lovely.
Oh, nice.
And growing up, my mother bought daylilies that were dried. You could get it at the Asian market in a cellophane bag. And it was many years later that I realized it was a beautiful flower. It's kind of part of my upbringing. So I used to belong to Lily Society in Sacramento. Unfortunately, all the members were retirees, and even though they had lots of energy and they did a lot of plant shows and outreach, ultimately they had to close down the club. But it got me, interested in lilies. So these are 3 different types. The only one I know for sure of the name is the Lilium pardalinum in the middle. It was part of someone's landscape. It's not one you see much because they're probably a little trickier to grow. They need protection from the hot sun, and I think the drainage has to be good. But a friend of mine had it, and she really wanted me to have it because otherwise it can disappear. And in fact, she died, and I was able to get a start of it, a good start. And I feel like I'm the keeper of this lily now. And I do dig it up and have it available at our plant sales.
Nice.
Yeah.
Which nice stand too.
Excuse me?
How long have you had it in your garden?
About 5 years now. And I give it coffee grounds. I don't know if that's the right thing, but I do try to add a lot of organic matter, to the soil. I think lilies like to be fed. I learned that from some of the members of the lily group. In fact, the one with the most success used turf food on her lilies, and they were spectacular. You would think, high nitrogen would be not the right thing, but she had very good success with it.
Well, they look happy.
Yeah, and the only one that's fragrant is the ones on the right.
That's the one that's related to the Easter lily, and I can't think of its name right now.
Yeah, or trumpet lily.
Yeah.
I can't remember either.
I'm wondering if that downward facing lily is it a part or related to the Martagon lily family? Or do you grow the
these
Martagon?
were kind of Asiatic, Just,
Oh,
yeah,
oh,
I
okay.
think, I'm not sure.
Have you grown the
Well-
No, I haven't. I just figured, I knew some people who brought martigons from Canada, and you wouldn't believe how beautiful. There were like 40 blooms on it, but they were from Canada. And I figured I just didn't have the right winter condition to, to make it healthy and happy. So I have not tried martigons, but I should, because they're available. And
Yeah, martigons are definitely around, but they don't seem to really do well in California overall. They are fussy. It's a European mountain lily, and
Oh.
that there are some plantings that I've seen just driving around in Oakland that are spectacular, but I tried it years ago and never really amounted to much of anything. The Pardalinum is sort of in its own group with with many of our other California native lilies. And it is a native, and they can be quite large and showy. I mean, at the Botanic Garden, we have a number of clones of them. Some of them are in flower now, many of them are still in bud. If you're interested in native lilies, right now we have Columbiana, Pelagiae, Pardalinum, Humboldtii, Oscillatum, and one or two more that are still in bud that are yet to come. The Perrii, the Occidentale, and then the Humboldtii. We also have Wigginsiae. So yeah, we do have a lot of lilies at the moment, and have for the last number of years. They are a little more, or some of them are much more difficult than others, but some of them are ones that you can kind of neglect, and they're happier when neglected. And I'd say that's probably the Humboldtii oscillatum, which is one of our biggest lilies and can have up to 40 or 50 flowers per inflorescence. It's a Southern California species, but it's perfectly hardy up here throughout the Bay Area.
You can grow in pots, okay?
Usually fairly big pots. One of the key things with most of our native lilies is they do not like heat at the ground. They like cool ground or shaded ground, and that they can take, or many of them can take sun as long as the root zone is cool and shaded. So think of them almost like clematis conditions, where again, keep the roots cool and the tops in the sun, and you'll be happy and get lots of flowers.
Yeah.
So Bart, when you say ignore them, as opposed to what?
As opposed to watering them a lot, or cultivating around them. Of course, again, with a lot of our bulbs that go dormant, you don't want to be digging around them a whole lot, because you can accidentally split the bulb or cut the bulb up. So yeah, it's just we find that they come up by seed, particularly the Humboldtii sorts, throughout much of the garden. And so some of them that you see at the Botanic Garden that aren't labeled are actually hybrids, just natural hybrids that have come up.
Wow.
Huh.
So they are mostly coastal, is that correct?
No, many of them are from moderate to high elevation in California. And we have some that occur in the high Sierra. And we have grown those, but we don't have them right now, parvum and so on, and Kellyanum. but others are found on serpentine, like Bolandri. We flowered Bolandri several times, but I don't think that it's come back up this year. And then some are more dryland growers, like Washingtonianum and rubescens, which are a little more, or are not a little more, very touchy. We found one that we thought was long dead, but then it came up last year, but only came up like 6 inches. And the plants, when they flower, are usually around 6 feet or so. So it's still there after decades, but it hasn't flowered ever. So yeah, some of them are fussy. Others are really vigorous and easy. And I'd say for dividing and making big clumps, Pardalinum is the easiest. And that for just single big stems and rarely clumping, again, unless they're hybridized, then they clump, are the Humboldtii oscillatum. Those are the 2 easiest ones for most people.
How much are they at the Botanic Gardens, and how big are they? And can you buy them when you're the nursery, when the garden is open, or do you have to wait for a sale?
Well, we did name a hybrid one that is just especially vigorous and just produces lots of offsets fast, but it looks more like a Humboldtii. And we called it, what was it? Lilium Tilden Botanic Garden.
That's hard to remember, isn't it, Bart?
Yeah, well, it was, what do you call something that's going to probably get messed up pretty quick by a lot of people? So that's what we named that one. But yeah, I think we were selling them for 15 or maybe 20 for flowering size plants.
Oh, okay.
Do you have them available today?
No. We're just about at the stopping of plant sales until our big sale in October. And that it would be, I mean, it wouldn't be the best time to buy and plant a lily right now, because they'd be almost in flower or just after flowering. It's better to get them in the fall and then plant them, get them established.
I bought or ordered seed from Cal Hort of Lilium Humboldtii, and I had very good germination. This is maybe about 2 or 3 years ago. So I have quite a few little bulbs of it
Nice.
yet to bloom. I mean, it's a ways from blooming.
I wonder how long it takes for them to bloom from seed. Bart, do you have any?
I think usually, well, again, it does depend a bit from species to species, but the fastest is about 3 years, and the slowest is probably 10.
You know.
Hopefully you're on the lower end of that scale, Daisy.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, well,
Oh,
if they were Humboldtii oscillatum, some of those will flower in like 3 years, 4 years. The most vigorous ones among them.
Yeah, all right.
I just checked the plant list at the Tilden, and according to there's 1 or 2 more Wednesday sales before it stops, according to the schedule. There's 2 Tilden Botanic Gardens in 1 gallon, and at least on the list, which is usually pretty good.
Yeah.
4 Pardalinums at 1 gallon that are available. So if you really want one, you go next Wednesday, you can probably get them.
Yeah,
Thank you for that.
The Pardalinum is the one from, or almost for sure, because it's the one that we've propagated the most, is the one from Lily Springs in Tilden Park, where they don't occur anymore because the deer and weedy vegetation crowded them out. But it is a local population of them. It's very nice. I have it at my house here in Point Richmond. They're in full bloom right now.
Have you guys tried to repopulate them with a deer fence?
No,
or
there,
something?
there really isn't a place to put them back right now. And especially with all the deer around it, they wouldn't make it.
Well, you'd have to put fence or something around it probably, huh?
Yeah.
You drive them nuts.
Could you show us some pictures next month of yours?
Sure. I mean, I did take pictures of them also at the garden because Pelargoniumm is oftentimes not seen, and we have a number of them right now that are in flower, and they're very fragrant. They're pink martagon type structure or Turk's cap lily, and they've got a yellow band down the middle of each tepal.
Oh, cute.
And then black dots.
Wow.
Daisy, do you have anything else to say about your lilies?
No, that's, I'm good.
Okay, I'm on.
Thank you.
So my front part by the street, I don't water much at all in the winter, in the summertime. It's mostly natives and some succulents and stuff down there. So these are some things that are blooming right now. The Monardella villosa Russian River, the Coyote Mint. I have two of those, and one is in the shade and it's not quite in bloom yet, or more shade. And this one is in fairly good sun with behind a rock though, so its roots are kind of shaded. Nice, really tough plant, easy to grow. And I guess Russian River is a little bit more robust, I guess, than some of the other ones. I think it's about 1.5 feet tall, and wintertime I just cut it back halfway. And I have 3 kind of populations of brodeas, some different, they're all a little bit different. One I got at Annie's has a stripe down the middle, and one is a little taller with longer stems off the main stem. And those are kind of a pink with a little bit bigger flower. And then on my next slide, I have my other another population but they never really bloomed much at all for me until this year. They really are doing really well. So I'm really happy about that. And then last year, I had bought this Madia elegans, and it got to this big, huge, billowing mass of flowers. It was probably about maybe 2 by 2. And it was a total surprise because I didn't expect it to, I know it kind of disappears until it blooms. Really showy little daisy-like flowers with a little maroon circle on it. And then this year, I guess it receded, and I got this little tiny thing with just, I guess there's 3 flowers on that.
I'm curious, though, and Ellen, about that Madia, because I've just introduced it to my garden last year for the first time from seeds I collected nearby, but it was it's gonna be a permanent addition to my garden. It's fantastic. It was about 5 or 6 feet tall. This year reseeded. It's all over it. It's all over the summer dry bulb garden, and they're not yet anywhere near blooming, but they're 2 and 3 feet tall now. I'm surprised. I mean, I didn't know they started blooming this early. But
well, that's just a little teeny little thing, and it it's really porous soil, and it's like I said, I don't water it. Once things start to dry out, I might water it maybe once a month.
That's one reason it's so spectacular. It doesn't want any water. It just disappears.
But I would have thought it would have, if it was coming up from seed, it would have done a really great job with all that rain. But
yeah, I
grew one from seed, and it's just about to bloom now. And I was surprised because the mother plant was not that robust, and this is just, it's tall and it's got lots of flower buds on it. And I think it's going to be blooming in the next week or something like that.
Oh, nice. Well, that's how mine was last year. I just loved it. And, but I was a little disappointed this year.
Yeah, well, the other thing to keep in mind about Madia elegans is there's 2 or 3 basic types. There's Madia elegans, which is the one that Saxon has, clearly. And probably what you have too, Bob. But Ellen, if yours is flowered a little bit ago, it could be Madia elegans vernalis, which is the spring blooming one, which is generally much shorter and still has the same markings. And again, sometimes it gets recognized botanically and other times not. But they're 2 completely different things in my mind. And then the other variation that you'll see in both types is pure golden yellow flowers with none of the brown markings.
Huh.
I like the brown markings myself, but some people don't. And so you can thin out things such that you only have the golden ones if that's what you're after.
Yeah, I like the little markings myself.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
They're very nice.
Yeah. Well, I'm definitely going to get another one or grow some from seed because I really love the plant. I thought it was great.
The other thing about them is that they typically open more in the late afternoon and night, and that they generally close up on sunny days by about 11 o'clock or so. And yeah, and that, but if you're near the bay and in the fog zone, they're open all day long.
What's the strategy on that with the pollinators?
Probably that it's probably moth pollinated primarily, but I don't know.
So is this going in the seed exchange?
Not for my 3 little flowers.
Laxton?
Well, I have thousands of them. As I say, it's going to be, I'm really super happy with it. I'm really surprised and that I've never grown it before. I guess because I didn't realize how glorious it can be with literally no water, and it's sprung up. It's spread all over the garden. Those of you who visit my garden, it's all over the front now. It's spread everywhere. I mean, I had to take them out by the handful because there's so many of them. But I'll be sure to have seeds.
I would love to have that problem.
Yeah.
I love those kinds of problems.
Where it reseeded all over the place, mostly is in the gravel areas. In the summer dry bulb bed, it had it spread nicely, but I'm just surprised in so many of the gravel areas of the garden, and I've let it happen. I'm very pleased. And it's quite fragrant. I don't hear anyone mention that, but I love the fragrance of it. It's really lovely.
Oh, I'll have to stick my nose into it. And then here's another a plant that I've got.
Actually, just real quick on that, it's the foliage that's aromatic, not the flowers on the Madia. It's the whole plant.
Huh. Okay, so here's when we went to the gardens up in Sacramento, quite a few places had this gorgeous lotus, and I know that from my nursery days, but I haven't really noticed it recently. But it was just doing so beautiful. Like, I need to get one of those for my garden. Evidently, it doesn't like the heat. It evidently likes the cooler temperatures of spring and early summer. So I might have to, it gets pretty warm at my house. So I might have to move it as it gets hotter. It's obviously not that big right now, but it has that really beautiful silvery foliage that trails, and then these bright orange. And this one seems more intense color. This one's called African Queen from when I knew it before, but evidently is deer resistant and attracts hummingbirds as well. And there's another patch of my rhodeias there. Heather, you're on.
Yeah, and actually that lotus is a very rare plant in nature. It's from the Canary Islands.
Oh, I'd love to see it in person.
I love it in that vase, Ellen.
Thank you. Yeah, I like that. That's a nice, tall, skinny little thing.
I don't mean vase, I mean container. I think it's perfect.
Heather, are you still on? Oh, I see you.
Hey, right. Hello. Yeah, so I mean, I was just snapping photos of all of the gorgeous blooms that are happening. I work in a bunch of gardens, and all these photos are from Montclair, so it's just a little bit above Oakland. Yeah, and just the colors are beautiful. I mean, the California poppies, the rose campion are one of my favorite flowers. It brings me back to my growing up years. And yeah, on the right, I mean, oak leaf hydrangea. There's the Iberis sempervirens on the bottom, dogwood on the top left. Just really beautiful, full gardens, and it's probably due to all that wonderful rain that we got.
Here, the oak leaf isn't in bloom quite yet, doesn't look like.
It's not. It's got all the buds. If you really zoom in, you could see them, but they're not coming out just yet.
Yeah, mine's pretty much in full bloom and almost ready to call it quits there.
Interesting.
Neat. And Spirea, that's chartreusey foliaged one.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yep.
And what's that on the upper right?
The upper right, it's probably a rose. It's a rose back
Oh,
there.
okay.
Yep.
Nice.
Yeah.
And is that a yarrow on the left there?
It is,
You know,
yeah.
with the
Easy color.
this there.
Mhm.
And we missed the poppies, it looks like too.
I know, but the seed heads are almost better than the actual poppies. So
Good point. Yes, they are.
oh, I just think these are so beautiful and decorative. I mean, that cream color with the purple. It's the Salvia microphylla. I think
Okay.
it's the heat. Oh gosh, the heat wave glimmer or something, but it's just so pretty. And the salvias are just going nuts right now also. So couldn't help but take a pic of that too.
Well, they should go all summer, I would assume, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
They're
they're pretty,
just so healthy looking this year.
they're kind of a little bit soft pink with that kind of almost purpley calyx there.
Mhm.
Nice, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Here's-
actually, where are you finding those microphyllas? I haven't seen that one. It's very nice.
That is a wonderful question. I sadly did not plant this. I could figure out how to get you some though.
Cuttings
Yeah,
are
well,
always useful.
I just think it's such an unusual,
Combination.
yeah, color combination in those flowers. It's really quite unique.
I agree.
Yeah, I've never seen a white one.
Me neither.
I've seen white ones, but I like this better than white. I mean, this has that little bit of yellow and cream in it, as well as a little bit of pink. It's
Yeah.
just really something quite different.
Maybe it's
And that it's obviously vigorous, which a lot of white flowered plants are not.
Almost like pearlescent, the combination of those subtle colors.
Yeah.
I guess you've got a job ahead of you, Heather.
Yeah, right. Distribute.
Fortunately, most salvias are so easy from cuttings.
Yeah, they're very easy. That's a great word, Saxon, pearlescence or whatever that word you use.
That I can't take credit for that. Was that Mark?
Oh, it was Mark, okay.
Yeah, guilty.
Good combination.
Okay, thank you, Heather, for sharing. That's great.
Sure.
More white flowers.
Oh, that's me.
Saxon.
Well, actually, I'm glad the first one is that Pinstem heterophilus GMR white. It's really lovely. It's yellowish before it opens. It's really great. I tried to do some research to figure out where the name came from, and
I did that same thing, and I was going to ask you.
I'm hoping Bart knows what GMR stands for.
Yeah, it's actually a selection of a friend of mine.
Oh,
And it's Glendora Mountain Road. Rick Fisher, the landscape architect in LA.
okay.
It's his find. And then he had given me plants of it at Rancho, and then I brought it up here. It is probably the best and longest lived of the Penstemon heterophilus sorts that are around. I mean, none of them are long lived, but I still have the original 2 in production pots that are 2-gallon size pots that I brought up with me in, what was that, 2013? And they're still alive. In the garden, they last about 5 to 6 years at the Botanic Garden.
Well, that's great. In fact, I must have gotten this one from you or from the garden because
Probably.
Yeah, it's and it's spreading nicely. I don't. You're right. Pinstems don't last too long, but it's I just love the fact that it has that yellow blush before it opens. It's really, really nice.
I went to
Yeah,
Flora not too
that's-
long ago, and they were raving about it. And I have one I yet to plant, but it's
Yeah.
I have it.
So
Yeah,
Bart,
It's Penstemon heterophilus variety australis. Variety australis is known for having those golden yellow buds. And so even the blue forms have it. It's a quite distinctive trait.
So Bart, just a question for you, because I've always wondered about this. It does well in the pot for you, but not in the ground. So obviously the ground is not a place it likes here, where you are. But the pot does not have the same conditions, and therefore it's surviving there. And do you then, to ensure that you have it, do you take cuttings every year and propagate it, or what do you guys do up there?
Oh yeah, well the ones in the pots are held back at the glass house. And all we keep them for there is cuttings. They've been the source of all of the plants that we've put in plant sales, all of the plants we put in the ground, all the plants that we gave some to Josh and to Phil and Sherry back then at Cal Flora.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a really good clone. And again, I am mystified as to why our 2 original plants in the 2-gallon pots are still looking fine and still producing lots of cutting material. It may be that we cut them so often, I don't know.
They're a Mediterranean plant, and that goes back to my theory that Mediterranean plants live longer if you tip prune them, which essentially that's what cuttings are, is tip pruning.
Yeah, that's possible. And that the interesting thing though is that it's from like a very steep, rocky, south-facing hillside. I mean, that's Glendora Mountain Road. It's up in the San Gabriel Mountains.
Well, it sure is, like I say, it's in the ground for me. So I assume it'll come back until it gets too old. But
yeah,
and it's planted right.
You say though, Saxon, that it's moving around. It's moving in your garden, and I wonder. One of my first mentors in gardening told me plants move, and they slowly move to where they want to be. And I wonder if they're moving changes the soil conditions every time they set new roots out or whatever, and that will make it survive longer.
Well, I think one of the things that I've noticed it doing at the Botanic Garden is it does come up from seed, and that the seedlings that have come up so far have all been white. But again, we haven't propagated any of those because again, this seems to be such a strong clonal individual that everything we've sold has been cuttings of the original clone, not from any of the seedlings. But I mean, I'm sure that over time, just like at our Botanic Garden here and at Rancho, we kind of independently evolved trichostoma clone or seed strains that just come up as seedlings and grow in our conditions. And that at Rancho, we had basically 2 competing types. There was the Mesa type that grew on the heavy clay soils, and then the other ones that came up out in the plant communities on the gravelly, super well-drained soils. And then at the Botanic Garden, we have them that come up in the new areas of Southern California with the really good, well-drained seed mix or soil mix. And then we have others that come up on the clays that were never amended. And they both come up and do well. But as many people know, trichostoma is not the easiest plant to get going.
No, I've tried. No.
Bart, did I hear you say the word Australis for this?
Yeah, it's Penstemon heterophilus variety australis.
Oh, Australis. Oh, okay.
Meaning southern.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
I wonder if they're attractive to gophers. I did get my first gopher last year, and I bought 2 of these, and one is doing fine, and the one closest to the bed that was invaded by the gopher did not make it. And I don't know for sure if that's what did it in, but I mean, other than that, they just bloom like forever, don't they?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's just, I mean, because, well, the other one that I always used to promote a lot was Margarita Bob, because that was another pretty good profuse flowering clone. And that I think those are the two best by far. I know there's a lot of other seed strains out there now called Blue Better and Blue Springs and all kinds of different things. And again, seed strains are going to vary quite a lot because each individual is going to be different, at least slightly. And that these others grown from cuttings are more what? Well, they're clones. They're going to perform typically the same way.
Right. Yep.
Well, I should keep the conversation moving, because this actually the pensum is planted right next to Phil's white mimulus, and so I wanted to take a picture of them in the same photo, but there was a gap, so it didn't really make sense. But and I hope the Phil's white hasn't been as prolific as some of my other mimulus, but I really liked it as white. It's pretty clean white, so it's it looks good.
Nice.
What I'm really most pleased with, probably my whole garden, and have been for many years, is the Philadelphus lewisii. It's just started to bloom. You guys can see the roof of my house behind this. It's probably at least 10 feet tall by 10 feet wide. It's spectacular. Wow. I love it so much. I've planted 2 others in the garden. It's just it's so big. It suckers. It runs. It's become a bigger plant. It's no longer a single plant, but it is so prolific. And this year especially, because we had so much rain, almost everything I'm showing here tonight looks good because it had so much rain. I haven't watered, and everything is just spectacular because of the rain. But the Philadelphus is just boy, it's so wonderful. I'm smiling just thinking about how about it, and it looks great right now. I just had to take one little shot of it to try to capture part of it for this presentation, but it's really lovely. And then lily is it just keeps getting better and better. Oh, go ahead.
The Philadelphus, the scent must be filling your air completely with the scent, isn't it?
It's not as fragrant as the as other Philadelphus species. It's definitely fragrant. And with having so many of it, it is fragrant, but it's not like the what's the East Coast Philadelphus we see so much. I'm having a brain fog, but anyway, I just like because it looks so great. It's fragrant when you're up against it, but it doesn't fragrant the whole garden. Although maybe I could go up and imagine it. It's a good 30 feet from the house, 30 or 40 feet from the house. So maybe I'll go. I'll try to figure it out. So the lily it keeps getting bigger. It's wild collected seed that I got from Sonoma Botanic Garden, and so in one of their plant sales years ago, they had them available and said it was the easiest lily to grow. So I grabbed some, and it's just it keeps coming back bigger and bigger every year, and this is fragrant. So I really recommend it for an easy lily.
Has it made more stalks for you, or is it just?
Yeah, no, it has one more every year, it seems like. So it's I might divide it maybe this year, because this year has 4 stalks on it. The first year it didn't only had 1, but past few years it's multiplied. So and actually the offsets are easy. The first year I planted it, I had a bunch of offsets, and now I have 4 or 5 other pots of it that are beginning to look good.
Nice. And you have it in pots?
I have a pot, yes. I have several pots of it, actually, because the lily bulblets are really easy. Just put them in a pot, and it takes several years to get big enough to flower, but they don't take any special care, that's for sure.
No, that's good to know.
So it's one that produces bulbils along the stem. Is that correct?
Maybe. I think it does now you're thinking about it, but I think the little bulblets I started were from the bulb itself, little scabs, the little you peel off from the bulb. Those are the ones that I already put in pots. The bulblets from the stem, I don't think that's where I've, this is my ignorance of the botany of it is coming.
Well, it's some lilies produce bulblets like you described on the or at the base of the parent bulb, but a number of species, particularly Asiatic ones, produce them along the leaf axils up the stem. And that I have a lily here that is almost black in color. It's actually called Mapira, but that the first year I grew it, it had bulbils all over the stems, up in the inflorescence, everywhere. And I gave them away to all kinds of people, and that they flowered in 1 year later.
Oh, 1 year.
Wow.
Yeah, and they were
Wow.
about the size of a fingernail, not really big, but they just develop fast. I even have them blooming in 2-inch pots.
Wow.
Do share, Bart, do
Yeah,
share.
well, I think I brought some of them to our plant sales, but I don't think anyone knew what they were.
Right. Sweet color, Saxon.
Yeah, it really is a sweet color. It's got that little blush of yellow inside, and the outside has that maroon and somewhat pink. I can see it. I'm looking up right now. It's outside my office door. I can almost want to go look if it has the bulblets, whatever that term is, Bart, on the stem. I could go look at it, but it's
Bulbils.
bulbils. Yeah.
Yeah.
So in this photo, what you're seeing, it's a little ornament hanging on the wall of my office, and the office door is just to the left of that. I'm here now looking out, and so I can see that. This Digiplexis, I'm curious if anyone else is growing it. I remember about 10 years ago when it was all the rage in the floral industry. I used to work a lot for the floral industry, and when Digiplexis came along, folks were very excited about it, and I grew some then, and I sort of forgot about it, so I saw it in the nursery last year. And it's pretty tough plant. And pretty unusual. It's a genetic cross between Isoplexis and Digitalis. And I wanted to show this to ask if anyone else has had experience with the Digiplexis.
Well, I tried growing it a few times, and it would go maybe for 2 years and then poop out on me. And I was up at Emerissa, not last December, but a year ago, and I decided, okay, I'm going to buy a whole bunch of them and try them all over the place in my garden and see if it was the location that was the problem. Because I think they're spectacular. And so far I've got bloom on all of them. They don't get giant or anything for me. And I don't know if they're long lived for me. But I saw them the first time where Sunset had their gardens up north here for me, off of 12 or Route 12 or something. At any rate, and they were spectacular in that garden, but I don't know what they were doing, and I have never been able to imitate.
I'm curious because this is just new this year, so I don't really know how drought tolerant it is. I'm hoping, because it's from half from the Canary Islands, that it should be somewhat drought tolerant, and it's supposedly is, but I'd say I only grew it ornamentally because I was working with the flower trade years ago, and now I'm hopeful.
Yeah, I've grown, the first one was called Illumination.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
That one I had for a while in giant pot. It lived for a number of years, but like Kristen said, not super long lived, but that I have the feeling that up here in the Bay Area, they probably do better overall, because Isoplexis does better overall up here than down south. But I find Isoplexis isn't terribly drought tolerant anyway, even though it's from the Canaries. It's from the laurel forests, or the margins of the laurel forests, which are their wetter environments. And that it is, though,
a very interesting plant. And I just saw one in a garden today in Orinda. So I know they're definitely around, but
Yeah, well, maybe I'll report back in a couple of years just to see how it really does, because it's exciting, because it's so interesting and it's very showy. You
Pretty
know,
plant, yeah.
so it'd be
yeah.
interesting to see.
Well, and the other thing that I found with mine was that all the isoplexuses are sort of subshrubs. They're somewhat woody, whereas digitalis almost never is. And so the plant was sort of in between. And it seemed like it really wasn't sure if it wanted to be herbaceous or somewhat woody. And so it wasn't really a good looking plant when it wasn't in bloom. I don't know if you and Kristen feel the same way about it, but I really like the flowers. The flowers are dynamite.
Yeah.
Kristen,
Well,
digitalis are biannual, aren't they? Or they
Yes.
are.
Some
And
are
that's-
perennial, but they're
Yeah.
short-lived perennials generally, and many of them are strictly biennial.
Kristen, you're
Yes.
thinking of a cornerstone, right?
Yes, yes, sorry, thanks.
Yeah, last month I was up there and they had them all in the border. They were like in full bloom.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, but I haven't had luck. And so, as I said, Marissa was selling them in December, and it wasn't this, maybe it was this December, but I just decided to buy a bunch and try them out all different places because it's the only way I'm going to figure out if I can grow them.
how are they doing so far?
They were blooming. You guys didn't notice, though. It's interesting. They were all over comments, but no. But I know there was too much to look at.
Yeah.
I do get that.
And for those of you who may remember my garden from the tour, which was, just in the earliest spring, you probably wouldn't have noticed my fuchsias. And I have big wine barrels of them, probably 6 different ones in the garden, and they are just, I fertilize them once a month and water them regularly. So they're not like a lot of other things in the garden, but when they start blooming, they're just so fantastic. And because we get frost in the wintertime, the mites aren't a problem. And this is the very, very first blossom. Maybe in a month or two, I could show, really glorious clusters of them, but it's exciting for us because they really are decorative, and they really, sort of herald the spring, not the summer season on our deck, because there's just so many of them. So it's really a fun thing to have. And then I just wanted to show this Rose Eden. I over the year, I've photographed 8 different rose books over the years, and I've seen hundreds of different kinds of roses, and we only have 13 in our garden. And this one is not fragrant. Some people tell me they think theirs is fragrant, but I don't grow up for the fragrance. It's a spectacularly big, buxom, huge flowered rose. I have it growing up. I built a rebar trellis, and so it's growing up high, and then the flowers are so heavy, you have to be under it to see it. So this is probably up about 7 feet. It's a climber. It's very vigorous. It's very prolific, and this year especially, it's vigorous. But I do prune it, pretty hard to make sure it reblooms. But I just can't believe what it looks like. It's just the blossoms are so huge and so heavy, they can't possibly hold up. They wouldn't be cut flowers. My wife Mary, will cut them and put them in a bowl, which is spectacular. But they're so heavy. You can see a little bit from the photograph that in the lower left, they just fall over. If they're not tied up, they just fall over. But it's so big. It's just anyway, there's nothing quite like it that I know of in the rose industry. So that's why I made sure I grew one here.
Saxon, how
Yeah.
long have you had Eden in the ground growing up?
Oh, I've had it for 7, 8, 9 years now. I cut it back hard because it's so vigorous, and I want to keep it. I have a rebar trellis. The trellis is about 6 feet tall. It's in a spiral. I put hunks of rebar together in concrete and create a spiral. So it's and actually before I had this, I had Rose Madame Hardy, on that spiral. And she moved in the garden. She's now at 2 places in the garden. I like Madame Hardy because it's so beautiful and fragrant, but it's a once bloomer. But anyway, I took that trellis and about 8 or 9 years ago, put Eden on it because I remembered it from years ago when I worked on rose books. And so I had an opening in the garden and I put Eden in it. And it's just
Did it take long for your Eden to produce blooms?
no.
I've had mine in for going on 5 years, and I think this year is the first time it's come to life.
No, it took a year to get tall enough to get up in the sun. It's in a part of my front border that's shaded by the camellias when it was young. But that's why I built the trellis so it would get up high, and it blooms. I said it took a couple years maybe to get high enough, but the past 3 or 4 years now, it's been fantastic.
Wow, beautiful rose.
It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's growing like a pillar then, rather than along a sideways.
Yeah,
Or
no, I
straight up?
have it's hard to describe it. I built a trellis. I took 5 pieces of rebar and bent them in a tall S shape, so they look like a spiral. And so, so each arm of the spiral, I can put one of the canes of the rose on it. So then it grows up from there. I mean, it's way outgrown the trellis, but the trellis, because it's steel, really helps hold it up.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. You'll have to show the whole thing next time as well.
Okay.
Next month.
Back to your fuchsia. I theorized that I have Magellanicas in my garden, which are the ones they say brought in the fuchsia mite. And any fuchsia that's hybridized and I hope Charlotte's still here. Yes, she is. And any fuchsia that has Magellanica in it would get the fuchsias, the mites. And I've only noted that the mites come to them, and mostly to the Magellanicas, but only if we are cooler. And when we get really hot, the mites disappear. So I don't know what that means, but I just thought I would share that information because I do get the mite, but I don't do anything about it because we go through cool. I mean, this spring has been unbelievably cool, but I just wanted to share that information that it seems like in the heat, the Magellanicas that have no mites.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that. I have I'm not sure which kind of mites I know there's a kind of mite that would destroy the fuchsia garden in San Francisco. It made them all the leaves just look like they were photomide. But one of my fuchsias here gets spider mites in the summer because it's in the it's the one barrel I have that's in the most shade. So it's the coolest one. It gets the least sun. So that one gets spider mites, which I have to shake off. And at the end of the summer, they're pretty. I have to cut it back. Doesn't look that great. But the ones that do get more sun don't get spider mites. But I think because we regularly get freezing here in Navato, that it's deciduous here. They're not normally deciduous plants, but because it goes deciduous here, and in a really cold winter, some of the arms of it will actually turn black and die off. But it's come back. I had this. Actually, not this one, but several others that I have in my garden. I had in San Francisco, from 40 years ago that I kept moving with me as I moved, and it's still one of my wife and I's favorite plant because we remember it from San Francisco. Our landlord in the Richmond district had it, and we took cuttings, and it's just been we've had it ever since. And I think because it freezes, we had it in Sonoma. We lived in town of Sonoma, which is even colder in the winter than Navato. It did fine.
It probably the mites probably go dormant at the extreme temperatures. I'm not sure that they totally disappear. If you don't have a lot of people around you with fuchsias, I think you can keep it clean if you get it clean. But if you're where people aren't doing anything with their fuchsias and everybody's got fuchsia mite, then it'll proliferate even more, pass around from insects and animals and wind and whatever that gets it from place to place. That would be my observations. There's a lot of new cultivars coming out. I have one called Angel's Earrings, and I don't get mite on it. It looks very similar to what you have there in your picture. And I'm sure there must be Magellanica in its background, but it does well.
Yeah, I don't know the names of any of mine. I just collected, little cuttings and they seem to be happy. But
As long as they're growing, who cares?
yeah.
Yeah, and one of my neighbors not too far, a couple of blocks up, has fuchsia that looks probably like swing time, if you're familiar with that one. It's a red and white with a big double corolla. Has mite all over it, but it was full of blooms that look just perfect. So, my theory is if the flowers look good,
Who
and
cares?
and the leaves aren't too distorted everywhere, who cares? If the flowers never look good, then it's kind of not worth it.
The hollyhock, I was in Giverny last summer and I pinched some seeds and I was so happy that they came up. They're very small at the moment, but I'm very pleased that they're looking good. And in fact, they're in the garden in the bulb meadow right next to the Clarkia. I saw, was it Daisy or someone already had shown the Clarkia Amina what's her flowering. So there is not.
That's Judy.
Oh, Judy, of course. Yeah, Judy, her whole front area with lots of them. And these are reseeded in the bulb meadow. So they're, I took all my pictures on Saturday and then today, they're already, that Amina is just, it's really lovely in the garden. I don't think the hollyhocks are going to get any much bigger this year. I'm hoping that they will get bigger next year. Just love that color.
That's
it's
beautiful, yeah.
I don't think they're hollyhocks. They're not hollyhocks. I think they're lavateras or malvas now, but they're not hollyhocks.
Oh,
Yeah,
well,
I agree with Kristen there.
Kristen would know. Yeah, you would know. I would
love some seed of this one though, if you ever get an abundance, because I'm learning that the forms are different, and even the lavateras now that are in our native ones, they have all gone to malvas. They're all being called malvas now. But this was called a lavatera, so I'm sure it's called a malva now.
Yeah. Well, in Giverny they call them hollyhocks, but I don't know.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean they hollyhocks isn't even a botanical.
I thought that was Alcea something for hollyhocks.
Right. Yes.
But it's not.
Althea, actually, Alcea and Althea. I forget which one is which now. If it's Althea is the hollyhock and Alcea is something else.
Rosa Sharon, isn't it?
No, oh no, those are hibiscus.
Yeah.
I have to
them as rust magnets. I think maybe you have to be where it gets warmer to make them happy.
Yeah, I don't know what you guys are talking about with rust. Sorry, I don't have rust. They like the heat. They like the heat. They like it dry, except for maybe the Russians can handle it. But oh no, they're Alceas. You're correct, Bart. Not Bart, Saxon. I think the dryness makes a big difference. Many of them come from the Mediterranean area, believe it or not, or the high deserts of the Middle East. So I think that's why they don't like more damp climates for the most part.
Yeah. And that the lavateras are almost all near coastal. So they do really well throughout our region and throughout coastal California.
Right. And there are these lower, I haven't grown these in quite a few years, but I never had a form like this. So I'd be curious. Because there are other plants, like I just started mallope seeds, MALOPE. And I've seen them growing in a garden when I went garage sailing, and the thing was about 4 feet tall and just massively blooming. And that could even be a mallope, but I don't know.
Well, these in Giverny, they were all, 5 feet tall and 5 and 6. They were all over the place. And it was late summer when we were there. So there were plenty of seed pods to pinch, but they're really tall. This one's only about, 14, 16 inches. So it really didn't grow much, but it's its first year. So I don't know what it will do eventually.
It'll be interesting to see how it does next year.
Yeah, I'm curious to see if it comes back for you.
Yeah, me
Because
too.
you're not as hot as I am, and you're growing it in a dry garden, right?
Yeah.
Giverny is not. I keep telling people we're the only Mediterranean climate in the world that gets no summer rain. All the others get some summer rain. Now, a lot of the mallows, though, will grow bone dry. I have a number of them that are growing bone dry with no water in my conditions. So it's a possibility that it'll just go dormant. I'm really curious because I don't recognize this.
Well,
You'll have to report back, Saxon, on that one.
Yeah.
Beautiful plant. I love it.
Love the color.
Yeah.
Isn't this one a species name of Sylvestris that's occurring to me?
No,
I don't know if it's right.
No, Sylvestris is a malva for sure. And that one, there's 2 varieties that got very popular, a double flowered purple Bieber felhoe and Malva zebrina. And they're very promiscuous and just go all over the place, from pale to dark to bluer toned purples to redder toned purples.
Well, this clematis, they're so easy. This was growing on the front railing of the house. This is actually the tail end of it, but it doesn't get any special care. I've accidentally almost killed it several times by cutting it. The stems are so thin and so easy to ignore amongst all the other stuff in the front that I've tried to kill it several times, but it just keeps coming back, and it's such a lovely color. And when they're all in bloom at once, it's just it's like a tapestry of purple. It's just really lovely. And this Niobe is nice because it has the yellow stamens, so it's a really nice one. And the Disampsia, it's interesting for those of you who visited in the early spring. This is in that front border where we took out all of those 30-foot rambling roses. So it's now getting a lot more sun, and everything in that front, the roses and the grasses are just really, really happy. And this is the best it's ever looked. It's the most sun it's ever gotten. So and I have 3 of this. And I tried to look up before I sent this to you, Ellen. It was a cultivar that I remember specifically buying years ago. There are a lot of Disampsias. It's a circumpolar species. I think it occurs almost everywhere. But this one was one that I remember buying because it was a special one, and I couldn't find my records for it. But anyway, looking great. And you can sort of vaguely see, I as a photographer, we know how to edit our photos. And so the Eden photo I showed you earlier was a clump that looked great on Sunday. In the back of this picture, you see a clump of Eden falling over. It's so heavy, but doesn't look so good. I probably should have deadheaded it if I was, but whenever I share these pictures, I just go off my iPhone and grab some photos to meet Ellen's deadline. So in the background, you see that same Eden rose that's sort of falling over. But anyway, the Disampsia looks really good, and I'm very pleased. I really like grasses in all parts of the garden, and this one looks really good this year. So,
and they're really moving tonight.
Yeah. Yeah, they are. Yeah. Well, the winds, I'm looking out, the winds died down here in Navato. It's not so crazy as it was earlier today or yesterday.
Oh, that's good. Okay, Robbie.
I was overwhelmed with the roses this year with all the rain we had, and all of a sudden they just exploded. I mean, it was just marvelous. My husband couldn't believe it. He says, "Oh my God, what are we going to do?" I grew a lot of the old garden roses and species, a few hybrid teas. They don't do as well up here, but I hang on to them anyway. I just was so amazed with the added rain. and what it did. It could possibly be that, you know, it takes, what do they say? What's this phrase? First year they sleep, second year they creep, third year they leap. Yeah, well, it took these guys about 5 years, and they're just, it's just gorgeous. I mean, I know I'm going to have quite a job cutting them back, and it has to be, but I'm enjoying them while they're there. And the little Christopher Marlowe, David Austin rose, I love that rose. It's in constant bloom, never out of bloom all season, and different shades of the pink and the darker pink. And I love that center pucker. So it's quite a thing to have them really like the conditions up here. The Rêve d'Or or the Tea Noisette really spread out. We have about a 9-foot fence, and it's growing over the fence, so it's probably a good 10 foot now. And I did cut it back earlier a couple of months ago because it was overtaking the walkway, and it just, you know, kept on going. By the way, the Noisette is the first, the only rose class original to the USA. So for that reason alone, I like growing them. And
It's 9 feet tall, and how wide?
Pardon?
It's 9 feet tall, and how wide? It looks.
Oh, well, yeah, and it will keep on going, I'm sure. And the Sally Holmes, of course, is a beautiful, it's classified as a shrub, but I think it's more of a climber because it does get quite tall. And it's just got really nice kind of pale apricot buds, along with the white open single white blooms. So that's very attractive.
Did you say the buds, aren't they usually like a peachy color?
Kind of a really pale apricot. Of course, it could be peachy according to the conditions if your soil and you know, air and climate is different.
Yeah. I've seen them referred to as two different types, the climber and shrub type.
Yeah, I think a lot of it depends on the conditions.
Oh, it's a showy rose.
Yeah, so I'm having a great time with the rose garden.
Looks great.
Oh, thanks, Mark. Oh yeah, little white pet, poly climber. The polys are very hardy little roses. Actually, this one in particular is not very little. The blooms are small, but the bush itself, being a climber, it's really getting up there. And just another one that exploded. It happens to be a cross with the wild roses, and I think it's got multiflora in it, which really gets big.
Is it a continuous bloomer, or is it one big shot?
It's a continuous bloomer. I think most of the ones that I've sent to you are continuous bloomers. I'm glad I have the room for the big roses because I love growing big roses, big bushes, and the ramblers and the species. And of course it does, the insects like them, the pollinators, because the simpler blooms on a lot of them.
It's nice to have the space to do that type of garden.
Yeah.
It's not everybody does. You're out in the wide open spaces. That's nice. Thank you, Robbie.
How long have you been up there, Robbie?
Let's see, 5 years.
Okay, yeah, they sure are large. They like you.
Yeah. Well, you know, I don't fertilize a lot. I compost mostly, and maybe a little alfalfa pellets in the spring, and that's it. I don't fertilize every week or whatever it is, even to the hybrid teas, which require a lot more feeding, but or like a lot more feeding, I should say.
Got to be a little bit of work when you deadhead, though, huh?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Shears, I think. Chainsaw? I don't know.
How much do you cut these back at the end of the season?
Well, a lot depends on the rose, but as you can see, I haven't really cut back very hard in the past 3 or 4 years. So this year, I can't say for sure because it depends on the rose. I look at the rose and see how, what it wants to do.
Uh-huh.
Probably, and if you have the space, right? If it's crowding
Yeah.
anybody. Okay, thank you, Robbie, for sharing those gorgeous roses.
Mhm.
Beryl.
I'm kind of a nut about this particular plant. And it hardly even grows where I have it in the shade, but I just love this plant. I don't know why. I mean, it's really straggly because I guess it needs more sun. But this year I discovered that new leaf. Thank you for circling it, Ellen. Had that striping in the new leaves. So since I'm such a big nut about this plant, that was exciting to me.
Are you gonna try to make a cutting of it or into a new plant, or I don't even know if euphorbias do cuttings very well.
Yeah, I don't. I'm sort of curious about what's going to happen to it because I never saw that before. So I'm just going to leave it for now. I mean, maybe it did it every year and I just didn't notice it. Then maybe the stripes will fade.
Does this euphorbia seed out for you at all? Because the flower color is amazing.
Yeah, it doesn't. I really probably should buy another one and put it in more sun. I mean, because I look at pictures online and, they're like a big faux dome-shaped shrub. And all I have are 3 straggly stems. So I think that's why I like it so much, because it
At that Dr. Seuss look.
I mean, I think if it was a big shrub the way I've seen the pictures, it wouldn't be that special. It would just be like a whole bunch of flowers. I mean, this particular flower on the right was when the flower, or should I say bract, first started opening, and the one on the left, you can see the stems are longer.
It's a pretty contrast with the maroon and the blue gray foliage.
Thank you, Ellen. I think that's why I like it so much. The color.
Yeah. It is neat.
I have a plant. I noticed some seedlings this year. Like they self-seeded around the garden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what the seeds look like when they're ripe. Right now they're just dark red. I'll have to keep watching it to try to understand when to collect the seeds.
I've never seen the seeds, but I guess they just like well-drained, gravelly sort of soil. If they land on one of those, and maybe it's the winter rain, and I noticed some seedlings this year, a few.
Oh, really? Yeah, well, all of my soil is covered with redwood leaves, so I don't have any gravel in my garden. Thank you. I will pay more attention to seeds this year. When I was volunteering at Merritt College many, many years ago, this rose was in a vase just to, show people what it looked like. Maybe they were selling the plant, I don't remember. But it just said heritage, so I have no idea what it is. And I really love the different stages of the flower. I love the bud when it starts to open up, and the flower, when it opens up more and it's yellow in the center. And the fragrance is really amazing. I can't, to describe the fragrance. I don't know if it would be called a spicy fragrance. I'm not really sure. But it's a very hard rose. I don't know how to prune it because there's just a bunch of really skinny stems, and I don't really know how to prune that kind of rose. So I kind of just let it get messy because I don't know what else to do. But I get a lot of flowers and
Pretty flower.
Mm-hmm.
And the fragrance, it's even better.
Yeah, it's extremely delicious, and I'll have to take more pictures of it next year, so I can show the different phases of the flower.
Do you want to trim it back? Is that why you want to trim it?
I just don't know how to make it look nice. I mean, just aesthetically, I don't know what to do. It's just a bunch. It's just like many skinny stems. It doesn't have a main stem of any kind.
So is it not full, or what's wrong with the barrel?
Well, it doesn't really have a form, it's just a lot of stems. Does that make sense?
Well, maybe if you cut it back, it'll get stronger stems. Or is it too much shade, you think?
No, I've tried that already. I mean, I've had it for many years. I tried cutting it back and it just keeps doing the same thing. It doesn't make any difference.
Sounds like that might be its habit.
Yeah, and I don't know, maybe I should try to find out what its name is by, using my Pixel phone and taking pictures of the flower.
Okay, so if anybody knows that rose, let Beryl know. So and then your full moon maple.
Yeah, I just, like this, the leaves on this. I have several maples, but, I decided to take a picture of this one for tonight. The name is kind of fun. Actually, according to Verd Trees, well, he's a Japanese maple kind of specialist. It has a lot of different names. Ellen, did you add that full moon?
Yeah, that's what I saw as the common name. I think the actinifolium is
full moon doesn't usually have as much of a cut leaf as this one.
Okay,
I mean, maybe it is a type of full moon, because of that sort of round shape of the leaf. But so you saw that it is considered to be a full moon. Interesting. Okay.
So what color of the leaf in the fall?
I'm not sure. It's very exciting, actually. I don't remember it being particularly good fall color.
Is it in a fair amount of shade?
Yeah, I don't really know. I actually dug it out last year because it was right next to two other maples, and the other ones got too big and they were, crowding each other out. So I put it in a container, and I'm not really sure where to put it in the garden.
You'll find a spot, or leave it in a container. Probably do okay in a container for a while too.
Probably, yeah.
Okay, and then you got a variegated Clivia.
Well, Ellen, I bought this from, is her name Marilyn?
Marilyn, Taskert.
Yeah, I mean, many years ago when she came to Cal Hort, and she offered a lot of her Clivias for sale. And I bought this only because I love the variegated leaf. And I had no idea what color the flower was going to be. So I found out this year. Actually, it had two separate flower stalks.
Oh, wow. The other one already completed?
Yeah, well, this picture I think I took a few weeks ago. The flowers are gone now. I mean, they're dried up.
Did any seed come up on it?
I'm ashamed to say I did not notice, but I will look at this one. I still have the stem from this one. I'll look at it.
The seed are big fat things on the tips of the stem, if you got any.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Beryl. Mark.
This is my favorite fern, and it's at Bart's place up at the Regional Parks Botanical Garden. and it's one of the names I'll never forget from my first and only plant identification class that I took. And it's a plant that I've killed lots of times. I definitely don't water enough to keep something like this happy.
Does it go dormant like the native one? I mean, this one's a native one as well, but
Yeah.
does it need year-round moisture? Can you let it go dry in the wintertime? I mean,
Well,
summertime.
this one grows on a fairly, on the hillside below the
Road.
redwoods, and I imagine they must water that.
Yep, they get watered sort of all the time, and that you can grow them in containers very well.
Oh.
And the one thing most people don't realize about all of our native adiantums is they like calcium. And so putting some ground up oyster shell in the soil makes a big difference.
Well, I'll be darned.
And that then what I do is I also put a bit of horticultural charcoal at the bottom of the pot. And then I put them in trays of water that I fill with water all the time.
Well, I guess I haven't killed it
how
enough
I grow
times.
them here. And at the Botanic Garden, they just get watered. They are pretty easy up there, and they're pretty easy at my house as long as they get enough water.
Yeah.
So they don't go dormant in the summertime?
The eluticums, no. The eluticums oftentimes get cut back in the winter, late winter, before the new fronds come out. That's generally, if you're going to cut them back, that's when you should do it.
Love the black stems, and I borrowed Leah's better cell phone to do the close-up on the left. Love the detail.
Neat.
Yeah, they are very, very pretty ferns.
Beautiful.
And then these are from the gardens at Lake Merritt. And since we're having Kiamara talk next month, which I'm looking forward to, it'll be interesting. Plus the interesting assortment of plants that she grew for us. It's kind of interesting. And I showed these pictures to Bart, so I got some extra information. He's offered the sweet pea nimbus apparently in the plant. I mean the seed exchange. Thank you. That's what I'm trying to say. And Edelweiss, I'd never heard of that. I mean, I'd never seen it. I'd certainly heard the song, but I can see why they would sing a song about it.
That has been flowering for over a month in the rock garden at Lake Merritt. Yeah,
I'm a little jealous of your connection there, Mary. It must be.
Well, come on down and volunteer. It's easy, and you get so many plants.
Yeah, I'm afraid all my gardening energy has to go into one place.
I know, that's true. And my garden gets more neglected, but yeah, it's really fun to be down there and see what she's doing.
I enjoyed talking to some of the other volunteers there about the lupines too. They had a lot of lupines.
Yeah, she's got some great lupins.
That's a great picture.
Who is she?
Kiamara Ludwig.
He is in charge of that garden. Okay.
And then I was gaga about this, and apparently, I guess Bart says these were collected near Davis, and the one on the right, I guess, is the target, is to have a closer to yellow, a purer yellow, but the one on the left is just, I think,
spectacular.
Spectacular.
Yeah.
I want to grow that one. Give me the rejects.
Well, I mean, we already have that regular yellow lupin, so that's really fantastic.
They do vary. I mean, it's because again, it's an annual and it's a seed strain, and so if you don't rogue them every year, they'll drift, and some of them do drift toward that more orangey red almost, but it's supposed to be that bright clear yellow.
Mm-hmm. And these on the left are just the flowers are fully open. Is that it? And on the right, they're kind of in bud.
No, they're both fully open.
Oh, they are. I see that. Yeah.
It's just that on the one on the left, the so-called banner, which is in that case red, is somewhat aborted almost.
You're drifting out, Bart.
See how that white part just, sorry, don't know what to do.
Right. Nice. But I think I used Leah's camera again to get a better close up on the left one, and the right one was given a short shrift with mine. Yeah, but I'm definitely got to get some seed of this and start growing that. I really like it.
How big was the plant?
It was a kind of a big jumbly. Well, you can
Chest of
see there
yellow.
were California poppies coming up and through it and stuff like that. It was kind of a big, wild looking mass of plant, but I would grow it anyway just to see some of those on the left.
Yeah, neat.
Yeah, and usually that form of microcarpus is about when the flower stems are fully there. They're knee-high-ish. Sometimes they're a little bit taller, sometimes shorter.
And they're not very substantial. I mean, some lupins are, are kind of sturdy, but this one seems to grow very flimsy, but still, for the detail, I'd take it.
Well, and it really depends where it's growing. I think I saw some that were just spectacular, giant ones up around somewhere in northern Marin, just on some abandoned soil in some city.
Neat.
Okay. Thanks, Mark. So next month, Kiamar and Ludwig, again, who grew all our plants for our plant sales last year, was it, or the year before?
It was actually for 2 years in a row.
Anyway, amazing plants, and she went to the Patagonia, and she will be talking about her adventures there and what she found.
Steppes are usually grasslands to dryish grasslands, like Denver. Denver is in a steppe climate. And so
where the guanacos roam, huh?
Yeah, well, so they're dry. They have a lot of interesting small plants, and they're oftentimes Mediterranean climate adjacent. Oftentimes, not always.
Anyway, so that should be a fun program. And then if anyone wants to do any field trips, I'd be glad to help them if they have any ideas, if they want to do one to Western Hills or maybe the Sonoma
Botanical Garden.
Yeah, that's their new name.
Okay. So that would be a fun field trip. Or if anybody has any gardens, they would be willing to share for a coffee in the garden event. That's usually pretty easy. Let me know. I'd be glad to help. Then we got notice that Fred Coe has passed away, and he was 104. So it is, he has an interesting story. Good night, everybody. Thanks for coming. And
Good night.
we'll see you
Thanks,
next
Ellen.
field trip.
Thanks, Ellen.